There is a small brass fitting sitting on a shelf in a hardware store in Decatur, Illinois. It weighs less than a deck of cards. It costs $11, and it allows a portable generator to run on gasoline, propane, or natural gas. 3 fuels, 1 fitting, $11. By February of next year, this fitting will be illegal to sell in the United States. Not because it is dangerous, not because it failed any safety test, not because a single person was ever harmed by one. It will be illegal because it does not comply with new emissions standards for small engine fuel delivery systems. Standards that were written specifically and deliberately to eliminate multi-fuel compatibility from consumer-grade generators. Raccoon Survival has been tracking this fitting for 9 months, and the fitting is not the story. The fitting is the door. Behind it is something much larger, because this fitting is not alone. It is one of 17 items, tools, components, seeds, filters, chemicals, devices that are being quietly removed from the American marketplace. Not all at once, not by the same agency, not under the same law, but all at the same time, all in the same direction, and all with the same result. When Raccoon Survival started pulling this thread, the assumption was simple. Supply chain disruption, post-pandemic normalization, companies cutting unprofitable product lines. That is the explanation you will hear from every analyst, every supply chain consultant, every cable news segment that bothers to cover the topic at all. And that explanation is wrong. This is not a supply chain story. This is a regulation story. And by the time most people notice, the items on this list will not be sitting on any shelf at all. Start with engines. Specifically, start with carburetors. The carburetor is perhaps the single most important mechanical component in the self-sufficiency toolbox. It mixes air and fuel to create combustion. It runs generators, water pumps, chainsaws, tillers, brush cutters, and log splitters. It has been doing this reliably for over a century. It requires no software, no internet connection, no subscription, no firmware update. It requires a screwdriver and 20 minutes. In 2024, the Environmental Protection Agency finalized Phase 3 of its small engine emissions standards. The language of the regulation targets volatile organic compound output from engines under 25 horsepower. The practical effect of the regulation is different. The practical effect is that traditional carburetors, the ones you can rebuild with a kit from any auto parts store, no longer meet compliance thresholds for new equipment manufactured or imported after January 2026. The replacement technology is electronic fuel injection, EFI, and electronic fuel injection works well. It is more fuel efficient. It produces fewer emissions. It is, by every technical measure, a superior system. Except for one thing: you cannot fix it yourself. A carburetor fails, and a person with a $10 rebuild kit and a YouTube video can have it running in an afternoon. An electronic fuel injection module fails, and you need a dealer diagnostic tool, a proprietary software connection, and a replacement board that the manufacturer may or may not still produce. If you live 40 miles from the nearest authorized service center, which roughly 19 million Americans do, you do not have a generator anymore. You have a paperweight. Gerald Hutchins ran a small engine repair shop in Boone County, Missouri, for 31 years. He rebuilt carburetors for farmers, for rural homeowners, for volunteer fire departments that could not afford new equipment. His parts wall had over 400 carburetor kits: Briggs & Stratton, Honda, Tecumseh, Kohler, every common small engine made in the last half-century. In March 2025, Gerald closed the shop. Not because he retired, not because business was slow. He closed because his 3 largest parts distributors informed him, within the same 60-day window, that carburetor rebuild kits for pre-2020 engines would no longer be stocked. not discontinued by the manufacturer, removed from the distribution catalogue. Gerald told a local newspaper the same thing he told Raccoon Survival. One word: impossible. It was impossible to serve his customers without parts that no longer existed in the supply chain. 31 years of expertise made irrelevant not by a competitor, not by technology, but by a catalogue decision made in a distribution warehouse 600 miles away. And here is the part that matters. Those 400 kits on Gerald's wall are still legal to own, still legal to use, still legal to install. They are simply no longer available to purchase through any standard commercial channel. The law did not ban the carburetor. The law changed the economics around the carburetor until the carburetor disappeared on its own. This is the mechanism. Remember it, because every item on this list follows the same pattern. Now move to seeds. Not all seeds, specific seeds, open-pollinated, non-hybrid vegetable varieties that have been grown by families and communities for generations. The kind of seed you can plant, harvest, save, and replant the following year without buying anything new. The kind of seed that makes a household partially independent of the commercial food supply. Patricia Coleman ran a seed library out of a converted farmhouse in Ashland, Oregon. She had been collecting, cataloging, and distributing heirloom seeds since 1997. At her peak, Patricia maintained active stock of over 600 open-pollinated varieties. Tomatoes, beans, squash, peppers, lettuces, herbs, root vegetables. Many of these varieties existed nowhere else. They had been passed down through families, adapted to specific microclimates, selected over decades for flavor and resilience rather than shelf life and shipping durability. In the spring of 2024, Patricia conducted her annual inventory. 41% of her supplier network had either ceased operations or been acquired. The acquiring entities, in every case, were subsidiaries of 3 multinational agrochemical corporations. The varieties those suppliers had carried were not continued under new ownership. They were, in the language of the acquisition paperwork, rationalized. Rationalized. That is the word used when a living genetic lineage, developed over 100 years of patient human selection, is deleted from a product catalogue because it does not generate sufficient revenue per SKU. Patricia reached out to Raccoon Survival in June of that year. She was not angry, she was precise. She laid out the numbers. 600 varieties in 2020, 342 in 2024, a projected 190 by 2027. Not because the seed stopped growing, not because demand declined, because the companies that owned the parent genetics decided that open-pollinated varieties competed with their patented hybrids. And here is where it gets sharper. In 11 states, legislation has been introduced, not yet passed in all, but introduced, that would classify the sale or exchange of non-certified seed varieties as a food safety violation. The language of these bills does not mention heirloom seeds. It mentions unverified genetic material distributed outside of regulated commercial channels. The practical effect is identical. If you save tomato seeds from your garden, and specifically to filtration. The high-output gravity-fed water filter has been a cornerstone of disaster preparedness for decades. These are the ceramic and carbon element systems that can process several gallons per hour, require no electricity, no plumbing, no pressure, and can render contaminated surface water safe to drink. They are used by rural households, by off-grid communities, by humanitarian organizations operating in disaster zones, and by anyone who takes seriously the possibility that municipal water infrastructure might at some point stop functioning. In 2024, a working group within the Consumer Product Safety Commission began reviewing the classification of high-capacity, portable water filtration systems. The review was prompted by a petition from a consortium of municipal water utilities. The petition's stated concern was that consumers using unregulated filtration devices might develop a false sense of security regarding water safety, potentially leading to health outcomes that would burden public health infrastructure. Read that again. The concern was not that the filters failed. The concern was that they worked too well, that people who owned them might stop depending on the municipal system. The proposed reclassification would move high-output portable filters from the consumer goods category into a dual-use designation. Dual use. The same classification applied to certain radio equipment, certain chemical precursors, and certain optical instruments. The practical consequence of dual-use classification is a licensing requirement for retail sale, a registration requirement for ownership above a certain capacity threshold, and an import restriction that would eliminate 80% of the models currently available to American consumers. Douglas Weaver has sold water filtration equipment from a warehouse in Flagstaff, Arizona for 14 years. His customer base is split roughly evenly between preppers, homesteaders, and international aid organizations. When the reclassification proposal was published in the Federal Register, Douglas pulled the document. It was 112 pages. He read every one. The word safety appeared 216 times. The word independence appeared 0 times. The word resilience appeared 0 times. The word self-sufficiency appeared 0 times. Douglas told Raccoon Survival something that stayed. He said the document reads like it was written by someone who is afraid of a population that can take care of itself. At this point, Raccoon Survival had 3 items: carburetors, seeds, water filters. 3 different industries, 3 different regulatory bodies, 3 different legal mechanisms, 1 identical outcome. The item that enables independence becomes harder to acquire, not through prohibition, but through regulatory friction. And the question became obvious. Is this a pattern, or is this a coincidence? To answer that, Raccoon Survival started making calls. Not to politicians, not to activists, not to conspiracy theorists on internet forums. To people who sell things, retailers, distributors, warehouse managers, the people who see the product catalogs before the public does, and who are the first to notice when something disappears. Linda Okafor manages pharmaceutical distribution for a regional cooperative that serves independent pharmacies across 4 Midwestern states. When Raccoon Survival asked her about supply trends, she did not hesitate. Amoxicillin, the most commonly prescribed antibiotic in America, available continuously, without interruption for decades. In 2024, Linda's cooperative experienced 6 separate allocation events, periods where the manufacturer limited how much product a distributor could order. Not because production stopped, because production was redirected. Redirected from independent pharmacy distribution to institutional channels, hospital systems, government stockpiles, pharmacy benefit managers tied to insurance networks. The result on the ground is that an independent pharmacist in a rural county cannot reliably stock the most basic antibiotic in the world. The drug exists. The drug is manufactured. The drug is not on the shelf where the patient needs it. Martin Costello runs an auto parts store, not the chain kind, the kind where the guy behind the counter knows what year your truck was made by the sound of your description. He has been tracking part discontinuations for years. His observation was blunt. Every part that allows a vehicle older than 2015 to keep running is being systematically removed from aftermarket catalogs. Ignition modules, mechanical fuel pumps, non-electronic voltage regulators, belt-driven components that do not require computer handshake protocols. Martin's theory is simple. A vehicle you can maintain yourself is a vehicle you do not have to replace. A vehicle you do not have to replace is a vehicle that does not generate revenue. And a vehicle that does not generate revenue is a vehicle that the industry has no interest in keeping on the road. Raccoon Survival found the same pattern in 6 more categories. Portable fuel storage containers that exceed 5 gallons. New spout regulations have made compliant models nearly unusable, and manufacturers have responded by discontinuing large-format containers rather than redesigning them. Off-grid solar charge controllers that operate independently of grid-tied inverter systems. New electrical code requirements in 14 states mandate grid interactive functionality, effectively prohibiting standalone solar setups for residential use. Shortwave radio receivers with single sideband capability. An FCC reclassification proposal would require registration of receivers, not just transmitters, above a certain sensitivity threshold. Bulk chemical precursors used in water purification, food preservation, and basic sanitation, calcium hypochlorite, potassium permanganate, sodium metabisulfite. Purchase quantity limits have been introduced in 9 states under Precursor Chemical Control Acts, originally designed to target methamphetamine production. Manual hand tools, not the decorative kind sold in boutique hardware stores, but the industrial-grade hand drills, braces, augers, and draw knives that can shape wood without electricity, have been removed from every major retail catalogue Raccoon Survival checked. They still exist. They are manufactured overseas. They simply do not occupy shelf space in any store an average American would walk into. And then there is the one that Raccoon Survival finds most telling. Cash. Not physical currency itself, although the trajectory there is its own conversation. Cash alternatives, barter networks, time banking systems, community currencies. In 4 states, legislation has been introduced that would require any organized exchange system operating outside of regulated financial infrastructure to register as a money services business. The compliance cost for MSB registration starts at approximately $14,000 annually before legal fees. A neighborhood barter network where families trade eggs for babysitting would technically fall under this definition. 17 items, 17 different stories, 17 different regulatory mechanisms, and one pattern so consistent that it cannot be accidental. The obvious explanation, the one you will hear from every reasonable, moderate, well-informed commentator, goes like this. This is progress. Old technology makes way for new technology. Inefficient products are replaced by efficient ones. Regulations protect consumers. Markets evolve. There is no conspiracy. There is only the normal, healthy churn of a modernizing economy. Raccoon Survival does not dismiss this explanation. Raccoon Survival tests it. If this is normal market evolution, then the replacement products should be available, affordable, and functional for the same use cases. Test that. The electronic fuel injection generator costs 3 to 5 times more than the carburetor model it replaces. It cannot be serviced without proprietary tools. Its average lifespan before requiring dealer service is 40% shorter. It does not run on multiple fuel types. For the 19 million Americans who live more than 40 miles from an authorized service center, it is not a replacement. It is a downgrade wrapped in a price increase. If this is consumer protection, then the regulations should address a documented harm. Test that. Raccoon Survival could not find a single documented case of consumer harm caused by a gravity-fed water filter that would justify dual-use reclassification. Not one hospitalization, not one lawsuit, not one product recall. The petition that triggered the review was filed by municipal water utilities, entities whose revenue model depends on consumer connection to the grid. If this is environmental progress, then the environmental benefit should be measurable and significant. Test that. Small engines under 25 horsepower account for less than 2% of total volatile organic compound emissions in the United States. 2%. The regulatory apparatus required to enforce Phase 3 compliance, the testing, the certification, the enforcement, the legal infrastructure, costs more in carbon output than the emissions it eliminates. The math does not work. Unless the math was never the point. The moderate explanation fails. Not on ideology, on arithmetic. So what is the actual explanation? Raccoon Survival does not have a single memo. There is no smoking gun document titled Operation Remove Self-Sufficiency. That is not how this works. There does not need to be a conspiracy when there is an alignment of incentives. Every corporation benefits from a consumer who cannot repair, replace, or do without their product. Every utility benefits from a customer who cannot generate their own power, purify their own water, or grow their own food. Every government agency benefits from a citizen whose daily survival depends on infrastructure that the agency controls. No one needs to coordinate this. The incentives coordinate themselves. Each entity acts in its own rational self-interest, and the cumulative effect is the systematic elimination of every tool that allows a human being to exist independently of commercial and governmental infrastructure. The regulatory language is always reasonable. Safety, emissions, consumer protection, public health. Each regulation, taken in isolation, sounds sensible. It is only when you lay 17 of them side by side, from 17 different agencies, across 17 different industries, targeting 17 different products, that the pattern becomes visible. And the pattern has a name. It is not new. Economists have called it dependency consolidation since the 1980s. You do not prohibit independence. You do not need to. You simply raise the cost of independence incrementally, across every category, until dependence becomes the only affordable option. This is the architecture, not a wall, a slope. A gentle, continuous, barely perceptible slope that tilts every transaction, every regulation, every product decision toward centralization and away from self-reliance. Now, the reason Raccoon Survival is making this video is not to make anyone angry. Anger is the least useful emotion in preparedness. The reason is that the window is still open. Every item on this list is still legal to own. Most are still legal to purchase. Some require creative sourcing, older inventory, private sellers, international vendors, estate sales, surplus markets. But they exist. They are out there, and the clock on each one is running. Here is the full list, 17 items. Raccoon Survival is going to be specific because vague advice is useless advice. 1. Tri-fuel conversion kits for portable generators. The brass fitting from the beginning of this video. They allow a standard gasoline generator to run on propane or natural gas. Current price, $8 to $15 per unit. Legal to purchase in all 50 states as of today. The compliance window closes in early 2027 for retail sale of non-certified fuel delivery components. 2. Carburetor rebuild kits for pre-2020 small engines. Briggs & Stratton, Honda GX Series, Kohler Command Series, Tecumseh. Distribution is contracting. Buy in bulk. A $10 kit today keeps a $2,000 generator running for another decade. 3. Open-pollinated, non-hybrid seed varieties. Tomatoes, beans, squash, corn, peppers. Not the packet from the garden center. The genetics that breed true from saved seed. Source from independent seed libraries and heritage seed exchanges. Build a personal seed bank. Vacuum seal. Store cool and dry. This is genetic insurance. 4. High-output gravity-fed water filters. Ceramic and carbon element systems rated for 1 gallon per hour or above. The dual-use reclassification is still in review. Current models are legal and available. Buy replacement elements in quantity. A filter is only as good as its consumables. 5. 5-gallon and larger portable fuel containers with functional spout mechanisms. The new EPA-compliant spouts are deliberately designed to minimize flow rate. Older containers with standard spouts are being removed from retail. Find them at estate sales, farm auctions, military surplus outlets. Fuel rotation discipline is essential. Store what you use what you store. 6. Off-grid capable solar charge controllers. MPPT controllers rated for 40 amps or above that operate independently of grid-tied systems. New electrical code in 14 states requires grid interactive functionality. Standalone controllers are being pulled from compliant product lists. These are available now through specialty solar suppliers and direct import. 7. Shortwave radio receivers with SSB capability. The FCC reclassification is still a proposal. Current models are legal and unregistered. A quality shortwave receiver is the only communications tool that functions when the internet is down, when cell towers are offline, and when local broadcast has been disrupted. It is a listening device. It receives information. In every historical crisis, the people who survived were the people who knew what was happening. 8. Calcium hypochlorite in granular form. Pool shock. This is the single most efficient water purification chemical available to civilians. 1 pound treats approximately 10,000 gallons of water. It stores for years in a cool, dry container. Unlike liquid bleach, it does not degrade. Purchase limits exist in 9 states. Check your local regulations. Buy what you legally can. Store it correctly. 9. Potassium permanganate. Water purification, wound disinfection, fire starting, snake venom oxidation. 1 chemical, 4 critical survival applications. It is being restricted under precursor chemical laws in multiple states. Available now through chemical supply companies and some veterinary suppliers. 10. Sodium metabisulfite. Food preservation. Specifically, the preservation of fruits, vegetables, and wine without refrigeration. This is how humanity stored food for centuries before electricity. It is classified as a food-grade chemical and is being swept into precursor control legislation, almost certainly by accident. But the effect is the same. Harder to buy, more paperwork, more friction. 11. Amoxicillin and other broad-spectrum antibiotics in veterinary formulations. Raccoon Survival is not providing medical advice. Raccoon Survival is observing that identical chemical compounds sold for veterinary use have historically been available without prescription, and that regulatory changes are progressively restricting this availability. A person who understands dosing, contraindications, and storage conditions may find this information relevant. A person who does not should consult a medical professional. 12. Mechanical fuel pumps for pre-2015 vehicles. If you own an older truck or SUV, the kind with a distributor, a carburetor or simple throttle body, and a mechanical fuel delivery system, your vehicle is one discontinued part away from becoming a lawn ornament. Mechanical fuel pumps are being removed from aftermarket catalogs. Buy spares now. Your vehicle is worth protecting because it is worth something that no new vehicle is. It runs without asking permission from a computer. 13. Non-electronic voltage regulators. Same logic. Older vehicles, older generators, older systems. The electronic replacements require specific programming and fail in ways that cannot be diagnosed without a dealer tool. The mechanical ones can be rebuilt with a soldering iron and a wiring diagram. 14. Manual hand tools of industrial grade. Brace and bit sets, draw knives, froe and mallet combinations, crosscut saws, broad axes. These are not decorative. These are the tools that built every structure in America before 1920. They do not require fuel, electricity, or batteries. They require skill, which is an investment that cannot be confiscated, taxed, or made illegal. 15. Cast iron cookware. Not the enameled boutique kind, the raw, unseasoned, American-made or vintage cast iron that lasts 200 years and works on any heat source, including an open fire. Production of domestic cast iron has declined by 60% since 2010. The imports that replaced it are thinner, lighter, and less durable. Good cast iron is becoming scarce. It will not become more available. 16. Bulk grain in sealed storage containers. Wheat berries, rice, oats, dried corn. Not processed, not packaged. The raw commodity in a sealed 5-gallon bucket with oxygen absorbers. This is the most calorie-dense, longest-lasting, cheapest food storage available. It requires a grain mill to use, which is item 17. 17. Manual grain mills. A hand-cranked grain mill converts stored wheat berries into flour. Flour becomes bread. Bread is survival. An electric grain mill is faster. It is also useless when the power is out. A quality hand-cranked mill costs between $200 and $400 today. It will outlast its owner. It is the single most important food processing tool for long-term preparedness, and almost no one owns one. 17 items. Some cost $11. Some cost $400. All of them share one characteristic. They work without asking anyone's permission. They do not need a password, a subscription, a firmware update, a cell signal, a grid connection, or a government approval to function. And that is precisely why they are disappearing. Not because they are dangerous, not because they are obsolete, not because the market decided they were unnecessary, because they represent a kind of independence that is incompatible with the economic model that every major institution in this country, corporate, governmental, and financial, depends on for its survival. A person who can generate their own electricity, purify their own water, grow their own food, preserve their own harvest, treat their own infections, maintain their own vehicle, build their own shelter, and communicate without infrastructure is a person who does not need to buy, subscribe, comply, or depend. That person is not a customer. That person is not a ratepayer. That person is not a dependent. And every system that profits from customers, ratepayers, and dependents has a rational, economic, non-conspiratorial reason to ensure that person does not exist. Raccoon Survival is not telling anyone what to do. Raccoon Survival is laying out the facts. The regulations are public. The timelines are published. The product catalogs are available for anyone to review. The discontinuation notices are real. The reclassification proposals are in the Federal Register. The window is open. It will not be open forever. Every month that passes, one more item becomes harder to find, more expensive to acquire, or more complicated to own legally. The slope continues, the tilt increases, and the people who notice too late will be the people who assumed that the things they needed would always be on the shelf. Gerald Hutchins knew. He watched it happen from behind the counter of his repair shop for 31 years, one discontinued part at a time, until the day there was nothing left to sell and no one left to serve. He said one word: impossible. Patricia Coleman knew. She watched 600 seed varieties become 342, and she can see 190 on the horizon. She gives it 2 years. Not the seeds, the paperwork. Douglas Weaver knew. He read all 112 pages. He looked for the word independence. It was not there. And the brass fitting, the small $11 tri-fuel adapter that allows one generator to run on 3 kinds of fuel, that weighs less than a deck of cards, that has never harmed a single human being. It is still legal to purchase today, for now. Raccoon Survival covered medical supplies in the last video and the regulation problem that is quietly reshaping what you can and cannot stock in your own home. If you missed it, it connects directly to what you just heard. Every item on this list exists inside that same regulatory architecture, and it is about to get worse. Because taxes and bans are slow. They move through committees and comment periods and legislative sessions. But scams are fast. The next video is about 11 Costco items that are secretly worth 10 times their listed price. And the people who already figured that out before anyone else did. That one is coming soon. That brass fitting, $11. Buy 10 of them. They will be worth more than what you paid for your car. There is a phrase that keeps coming up in these conversations. Not from preppers, not from survivalists, not from anyone who would describe themselves as political. From warehouse managers and regional distributors and the people who process purchase orders for a living. The phrase is, last allocation. Last allocation means the manufacturer has informed the distributor that the current shipment is the final one. No backorder, no restock date, no substitution. The product simply ceases to exist in the supply chain. The shelf space gets reassigned. The SKU gets deleted. And unless you are paying attention to a warehouse database that no consumer ever sees, you would never know it happened. Raccoon Survival has confirmed last allocation notices on 4 of the 17 items in this video within the past 90 days. 4. In 3 months. Carburetor rebuild kits for 2 engine families. 1 model of gravity-fed ceramic water filter, and the tri-fuel fitting, the one from the beginning, the $11 brass fitting. Last allocation was processed on January 14th. The current inventory in the retail pipeline is what exists. When it is gone, it is gone. And this is where the conversation shifts from information to decision. Because there are 2 kinds of people watching this video right now. There are people who will take this list, verify what they can, source what they need, and act within the next 30 days. And there are people who will find this interesting, maybe bookmark it, maybe share it, and never do anything at all. Both groups heard the same words. Both groups have access to the same information. 6 months from now, one group will have a shelf full of tools that still work. The other group will be searching for products that no longer have a buy button. Raccoon Survival cannot make that decision for anyone. Raccoon Survival can only do what Raccoon Survival does. Lay out the facts, name the sources, trace the pattern, and leave the rest to the people who are paying attention. But there is one more thing, and it is the thing that Raccoon Survival thinks about at night. The items on this list are not just products, they are capabilities. A tri-fuel fitting is not a piece of brass. It is the ability to keep your lights on when the gas station is dry. A gravity-fed water filter is not a ceramic cylinder. It is the ability to drink from a creek without dying. A packet of open pollinated seeds is not a handful of dry specks. It is the ability to feed your family next year with something you grew this year. A manual grain mill is not a cast iron contraption with a crank handle. It is the ability to turn stored wheat into bread when every bakery within 50 miles is closed. Capabilities, not products, capabilities. And when a capability is removed from the marketplace, it is not like a product being discontinued. A discontinued product can be replaced by another product. A discontinued capability cannot be replaced by anything. It is simply gone. And the person who needed it discovers the absence not in a store, not on a website, not in a catalogue, but in the moment of crisis when they reach for something that is no longer there. That is the moment Raccoon Survival is trying to prevent. Not with fear, not with politics, not with conspiracy. With a list, with sources, with timelines, with the most boring, unsexy, practical form of preparedness there is. Go to a store, buy a thing, put it on a shelf, repeat. The regulations will continue, the reclassifications will continue, the last allocation notices will continue, the slope will continue tilting. None of that is within anyone's individual control. What is within your control is what is on your shelf when the window closes. Raccoon Survival covered medical supplies and the regulation architecture in the last video. If you have not seen it, go back. It is the foundation for everything discussed here today. The regulatory mechanisms are not separate stories. They are one story told across multiple agencies and multiple product categories. And the next video, Raccoon Survival said it would be about 11 Costco items worth 10 times their price. It is. But it is also about something else. It is about the difference between retail price and survival value, and why those two numbers are diverging faster than at any point in the last 50 years. There are items sitting on a warehouse shelf right now, priced for a Tuesday afternoon, that will be worth more than cash in a Monday morning that no one saw coming. That video is coming soon. In the meantime, the brass fitting, $11, still legal, still available, still sitting on a shelf in a hardware store in Decatur, Illinois. Go get it.